Well, it's no secret that real estate is hot, hot, hot. So what should you do? You've got all this equity. Should you pull some of it out to buy investment property? One of my great buddies is here, Jonathan Cohen-Kurzrock. How you doing, buddy?
Derrick, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you, bro. This conversation, you and me and everyone else can just kind of listen in on it.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is something that I've looked at. Lots of people are talking about. I'm getting calls every day for cash out refis. Hey, what are rates? You know, looking to do this. Like when you're advising someone who calls you, says, hey, Jonathan, hey, thanks for helping us buy this house, 2 years ago. Now we've got $300,000 worth of equity.
Exactly, yeah. What do we do with it?
Yeah, how do you approach that when you get those calls?
So for me personally, and this is why I really want to talk to you about it today, Derrick, because I want to hopefully be able to dive into some of the numbers or dive into some of the options that my buyers from 2019 and 2020, and honestly even 2021, have because of all the equity they've earned in their homes. I have clients that bought in Claremont, for $750,000, $800,000, and their homes are now $1 million. And instead of, they come to me and they're like, oh, can I get something bigger? And this market's really tough. What are the other options? And I actually tell most of my clients, like, hey, don't sell. See if you can cash out refi or do a home equity line of credit. See if there's any other options that you can use to buy an investment property before you sell. Because I truly believe real estate is like a generational wealth builder.
Yes.
And the more property you own, the better you're going to do for yourself and for everyone, for the rest of your family, for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And so I always like to look at the option of holding and seeing what you can do to purchase. So to me, that's what's really important. What are the options for maybe a cash out refi? What can you use the money for? How does that even look? And especially with everyone who has so much equity in their homes but don't want to sell it.
Yeah.
What can they do?
So I have a very specific formula for like going through this process. And a lot of times it just begins with, okay, what are your actual options to tap into the equity? And if you have a VA loan, that's one situation, right? If you're a conventional loan or FHA, that's another situation. But what would you be able to do from a cash out refi standpoint? So like for VA, you can get 100% cash out. And the rates are great up to 90%, between 90 and 100. They jump up a little bit. So we have to kind of sometimes look at both. Hey, what if we do 90%? How much are we talking about? What if we do 100%? How much are we talking about? And then we always have to look at our cost for capital and what that new monthly payment is going to be versus the old one and say, okay, hey, I got 100,000 out. Here's how much it's actually cost me, $700 a month or whatever. So a lot of times also with people is what rate do you have now? Because if you got a smoking rate or you refied to 2.5% on your conventional loan, we're going to try not to touch that.
Yeah.
We want to try to get you the money without touching that, whether it's getting a HELOC, which we can do on the wholesale side. If they're bigger, they need to be like 150 grand. The smaller ones, the $20,000 or $50,000 ones, you just go to your local bank. But for a lot of people, I'll just tell them, hey, go to your bank, who you bank with, and see what can you get for a signature loan. What can you get? Because second mortgages really don't exist anymore. They're pretty much off the map. There's no secondary market for it. They really don't exist. But you can still get signature loans. You can still get home equity lines with a lot of your local bank. The bank you bank with will invest in you for that. Home equity lines are more like credit cards. So
Okay.
they're not built like a traditional loan, what we call a simple interest loan, where you make a certain payment and at a certain date you don't owe anymore. It's more like a credit card where your minimum payment, is a certain amount, and it could take you 60 years to pay it off. So home equity lines are not ideal for someone who's just going to use the money once.
Okay.
They're more designed for people who are, let's say, buying. I know a guy who's got a home equity line for 300 grand, and he uses it to buy houses cash through the home equity line, basically, and then he pays them off through other means when he resells them. So if you're recycling money, home equity lines are great. So that's why I tell people to go and look for a personal loan, a signature loan from your bank. How much will they give you? They tell them they can collateralize the house if they want to, and then I have them bring that data back to me so that we can say, okay, this is how much cost of capital would be if you went through the bank and how much you can get. Now let's see what a cash out refi would look like. What does cost of capital look like there? Because if we're increasing your interest rate to get the cash out on the amount you currently owe, we have to factor that in to the equation. And so then we'll look at both options and see, okay, which one is actually going to be better? Which one gives me the best cost per capital? And that could, we also have to factor in, tax advantages and all that stuff too.
For sure.
So just look at those two things and then we'll have a good idea. All right, now we know how much cash you can access. We know what it costs. Now can we find good investment opportunities? Because if you're buying investment property, you're putting 25% down.
Exactly.
So we have an idea based on the cash that we're getting, what price point we're looking at. A lot of people are talking about out of state. That's where a lot of people are going with this. they're taking 300,000 or 400,000. They're buying a couple houses or a couple duplexes in Michigan or whatever, and more power to everyone who wants to do that. Like if that's your game, if you know those areas, if you're from there or you have an in there or something, a relative who is a realtor there or whatever, great, go for it. Me personally, I do it in Missouri because I know the area well. I completely understand the culture there and what's going on and what things are worth. So I get that. But for most people just going, oh, I don't know, should we buy one in North Carolina or maybe Utah, or you've never even been there before and you want to buy a property, don't do that, okay? Like if you've never been there, you have no idea what the market is like, you could be the sucker.
Yeah, it's important to really know the lay of the land.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I do discourage people from just buying in random places because it sounds good or they read an article about how great it is there. But outside of that, money-wise, determine cost of capital, so have an idea of what our budget is. Now, can we find a good deal?
Yeah.
And that's where they come back to you.
Finding a good deal?
Yes.
No, I want to ask more questions.
Okay.
I want to ask more questions. Finding a good deal is really tough in San Diego, so let's just jump back into asking more questions. But I would say, well, with rents going up and everything, there's deals to be had. I think rents haven't caught up with the rising prices, but they're going to quickly do that. We're seeing rents come up. They went up 20% last year. They're already up probably like 20% this year, going to go up another 20%. So that's going to have an equilibrium. Right now, like for a few of my investor clients, they don't see cash flow with the purchases, but I'm still seeing a lot of investors purchase because wholesaling, because of future predictions of where just not wholesaling, but hold sailing.
Yeah.
You can hold for 6 months and sell for 100K more. Mm-hmm. For the last 2 years, you've been able to do that pretty consistently. So good deals in that regard. The rents haven't caught up, but they will catch up, in my opinion. But I want to go back and kind of, if we have time, go into like some of the numbers. Let's say I bought my home for $750,000. It's now worth $1 million, but I have it at like that 2.5%. I got that amazing 2.5% rate in 2021. How can I am I able to actually pull that $250,000 out? Like, I guess learning more about the cash out refi.
Restrictions.
Can I just take $250,000 out? When I have that $250,000, I'm going to have a new loan on my home. How is that going to affect my debt to income ratio when I'm trying to buy the investment property?
Good question. That's a really good question.
So some of those things.
So for how much you can take out, so for conventional, 80% is your max LTV or loan to value ratio for a cash out refinance, which means that if you have a property worth $1 million, your max loan amount is going to be $800,000. Now you may have bought it for $750,000, but let's say you put $150,000 down, you only owe $600,000, so you can still go in and get $200,000, but you got to have that 20% equity position.
And the bank will actually give you a check.
Yeah, escrow. Yeah, we'll give you a check when you complete the refi, pay off the old loan, create the new one, you get the excess, right? So that all comes to you in the form of a check, or you can have them wire it to you if you want to pay like $15 or something. So you get the money. Now it's your cash
instead of the loan
money.
being for like that $600,000 amount, it's now at $800,000.
Right.
That's going to affect, especially with interest rate, that's going to affect what your monthly payment is.
Correct.
Go on.
That's where we figure out the cost of capital. So now you have $200,000. We don't know how much is that costing you per month.
Yeah.
Is it $1,000 a month? Is it $1,200, $1,500 a month? You need to know, because if you're going to take it and invest it, you need to know what you're up against. What is your actual cost for that money, so that you know how much return you need to get to make it a good move. If it costs you $1,500 a month, you deploy it and you only make $1,000, you're losing some money for yourself. So that's why we do those calculations. When you're buying an investment property, it's actually very easy to qualify for an investment property. The reason is because you can use the rent for part of your income. So when you are putting 25% down on a property, that helps from a cash flow perspective. So you put 25% down. In fact, there's an old hack out there, and I would never do this, but there's an old hack out there for people who have money but don't have great income, maybe they're self-employed or whatever, where they some lenders would tell you to go and buy that house as an investment property so you can use potential rental income. It's very easy to qualify now. Buy it and then just move into it. Yeah, you're gonna have to take a higher rate, but you can actually get into a house. So I would never tell anyone to do that, but some lenders have told people to do that. Now, so that's an old trick though, but it's easier to qualify for an investment
counterintuitive
property.
because most people don't want the higher interest rate, but yeah.
Yeah, and the 25% down makes it more difficult for barrier to entry, but for people who have cash and just don't have income, it's something that people have discussed and other people have done. But for when you are a homeowner who's now buying an investment property, yes, the new loan that you got at the higher amount, the higher payment, that is now part of your DTI. So it is part of the equation, and you have to look at that. And this should all be calculated and understood before you execute your refinance.
Yeah.
You should not refinance, get the cash out, and then go, oh, you don't really qualify for much. That would be a huge mistake on your loan officer's part. Don't allow them to make that mistake. Make sure you know, okay, if we go through with this refinance, what are we going to be looking at on the other side? So you can be perusing the market, getting a feel for things, getting an understanding for where it's going to look.
Seeing if there's anything even out there that's available, a local market or in secondary markets.
Exactly.
And so, one last question. This has been super amazing. One last question. When you look at the rental income of a place, does it have to have like a 1-year history, a 2-year history, or like an Airbnb history, short-term vacation rental history? Or can you make an assumption? And is that what you can submit to a lender?
Yeah, you can use the rental survey from the appraiser. And so you can sort of, you know what that's going to look like, right? Because they're using the data that's from the MLS. So off-market rentals, people can pay whatever. You won't ever know. You can't use that. But if there's actual rental information in the MLS, which is what the appraiser is going to use, you can then use that to qualify. Or if you have evidence of certain rental agreements or whatever for the area or for that property, maybe it's the past, you can also use that. So there's multiple ways that you can use potential rental income, but you're probably going to be using less than what you'd actually be able to get, because what you can get is like off the charts right now. And you get to use 75% of it. So that's the vacancy factor, is 25%, which is a huge vacancy factor, but that's how it's always worked. So if you have a $4,000 a month verifiable income from the appraiser, you get to use $3,000 a month as your gross income towards your qualifications.
Amazing.
Which is huge and makes a big difference in what you're able to qualify for, especially with 25% down.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. I know I'm supposed to do most of the talking here, but bam, I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Grabbing the reins on it. Yeah, providing some knowledge.
Bottom line is, we'll wrap it up with, yes, you have equity. What should you do with it? First of all, explore your costs for accessing that equity. And then once you have an idea, your head wrapped around that, then start looking around. See what you see. You might find a great deal. And if you do, you'll know what to do to execute. So let's make sure you share this with your friends and make them smarter than everyone else.